We're out here today to set up Smith & Rogue's Goahti 8-person teepee. So flat first, and then safe second, or actually should be safe first and flat second. We don't want to be at the bottom of a big run out where there could be, or there's evidence that there has been an avalanche. We don't want to be there. Trees are good to block the wind, but they also present their own falling hazard, so we want to make sure there's no standing dead within the radius of our camp where a tree is going to be able to fall on us, those widow makers as they say. And then in the wintertime, we don't have to be so much concerned if we're not digging all the way down, because we're on a temporary surface of the snow. So we can kind of level out the ground. We don't have to worry about our impact on the ground as much. You know, we're not trampling vegetation or anything like that, because it's already trampled by the snow. We're not a part of that. Yeah, avalanche safety and widow makers, especially for the high winds that we're known to get around here. So what we're looking at is a little clearing right over here, obviously out of avalanche area, and then there's not even a standing dead for 100 yards. So that's kind of what we're looking at. So roughly 5 meters. We got our handy dandy ski poles here that give us 100 centimeters or 1 meter mark. I chose, you'll do 3 to 4 out in each direction, depending on how much snow you need to dig up and how deep you're gonna go. So we'll make a cross, get our direction, and we'll make it a circle. And then that'll be the footprint for our tent. And we'll be able to utilize some of the snow that we move to be an anchor, be a wind wall. We can dig in a little kitchen shelf over here. So I guess we'll wait for the wind to pick up like it's probably gonna do. But if it doesn't, if there's no wind blowing while you're setting your teepee up, then it really doesn't matter. You can go with, set your doors to the prevailing winds for the area, which are usually southwest or northeast over here. So just make a wind call and see where you're going. So you want to have enough of a footprint so that you can walk around the outside, the entire outside of your teepee while you're in there, in case there's additional snow falling and you got to get out and clean that off. So don't just think as the teepee, you need the teepee plus your operation space, right? Like the ability to move around it. Because if you're staying in one place, like you're gonna come back here and be ski touring all around, you're gonna want a shelf to, you know, over here we'll make a little shelf to put our skis for the night and all that kind of thing, where everybody can kind of get their skis on right here, and then we can head out for the day. So we're thinking that we got to think about our teepee plus living space. So you're gonna have a sizable footprint. Snow conditions today are fairly packed, so I don't think we're gonna have to shovel too terribly much. One thing that we can do is we get our measurements, and then you can put your skis on, and then using those as basically a tamper and just packing the snow down as a group. 4 or 5 people can pack this area down really quick, really hard. So get your diameter laid out, and then just start packing the snow, and you can kind of shovel it around to even it out wherever you need, or move it all to one side to be your wind wall, whatever your conditions require. Today we don't really need a wind wall, so we'll just see what we get away with just packing some snow down. Yeah, so this will be without the netting. We want to be able to put the pole all the way on the ground. So if we're not going to dig out to bare ground, we'll probably want to grab a piece of wood or something and make a little platform for our center pole. And you'd want to do that in the snow, or if you had, even if you had really soft ground, like, you know, spring runoff time when this is going to be kind of muddy, you'd probably still want to put some sort of little platform or rock underneath the pole so it doesn't keep sinking down in the mud, because that you're going to be pulling down on a single point that's only about 1.5 inches in diameter. So any sort of any movement that it can get by going down, it's going to go down, right? It's going to want to sink. So we want to get it set on a platform, and then that way we can keep it from sinking down. And this can be done usually with just a piece of wood or so. So wintertime, we want to be able to use our stove. The teepee has a stove jack in it, but it has a flap on it. So before we get the pole all the way up, we want to make sure that that stove flap is peeled back and held in the open position by its little keeper tab, because we don't want that nylon running down and hitting the stove pipe and basically melting that thing off. So that's one thing to keep in mind before we get it all stood up. It's kind of hard to come back and redo that point if you don't get it. Same with your ventilation. You open those up. Depending on how tall you are, I can't quite reach them, but some other people can. So
Scott, are you still growing? How tall are you right now?
Right now.
Right now.
In these boots, 5'7".
Sure.
But making sure our stove jack's open, and other than that, you're pretty much ready to go once you have your site. And then we'll get the teepee out and just pick a door and grab some stakes and go from there. Like I said, these are my personal kit that I use for a floor, but everything else that I'm gonna pull out of this bag is gonna be what comes with the tent. Got our pole. Go ahead and get that together for me. And stakes. You get a big bag of stakes. So we got nice beefy metal stakes there. Good for gravel bars and snow banks. And then we'll go over some different tricks to get those positioned properly. I've had this teepee for a little bit, and I restuffed it with the pole pocket in the top. So when I pull this out, let's just say it's snowing or raining even. So as I'm pulling this out, I'm kind of maintaining control, and I'm not dragging it through the dirt any more than it's gonna be. So now I've got a nice, neat working bundle, and I've already found one of my zippers. Like I was saying, this is gonna be our first stake point. So we don't really have a lot of wind going on right now, but what I did feel was coming from our more westerly direction here. So we'll put one of our doors facing that way. Yep, so that'll be, so this will be your bottom section where you've got your detent pin and the multiple notches. So we'll want to start at the lowest one. We'll get it staked out, and then either the ground will settle overnight. This material does have a little bit of stretch to it, so we'll pitch it super tight. Then before you go to bed, you'll probably notice you can move the pole up a notch. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our stake and we're gonna wrap this Guyline around it. Yeah, so strip that out. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna dig a trench perpendicular to this line. So I'm gonna dig a trench like this right here. And then I'm just gonna put my stake in there. And then I'm just gonna pack the snow right back on top of it. And this will be a nice hard anchor for us. That's called a deadman. So it's just a dead weight in the snow there. Yeah, so keep wrapping that up. Well, no, we're on the seam. So go to the next one. So like this is what I was saying. You'll have your prominent seam line coming down here. Yep. And then so that'll be the 3 points that we want to kind of anchor out to get us started going around and making our circle. So here, let me see that. So we can kind of go ahead and get our circle started here. So this is where my next anchor is going to want to be, coming off of this right here. So I'm just going to do the same thing, make my little trench here. And actually, the snow's not so deep that we couldn't drive these stakes, but it's pretty hard. So we'll just do the Deadman, and we'll utilize the snow to our advantage, because the ground's probably going to be pretty frozen doing that this time of year. Now the same thing can be accomplished if we had, say, rocks. You just tie a string off of this, wrap the string around the stake, and then pile rocks on the stake, and it'll act as that same anchor. Actually, I think we're gonna get lucky over here, and we might actually be able to set this stake. Seems like I just punched in the ground, and there was like it wanted to be. Oh yeah. So sometimes you get lucky. And when you don't, you grab a hatchet. That's fine, Caleb, we'll do the pole next. Okay, so now we're ready to get our center pole up, but before we do that, we want to check on our ventilation system here. So we've got 2 large hoop vents. So even in the wintertime, it's gonna be counterintuitive, but I would leave these open. And if you're, in a basically bug-free environment, you can open up the zippers as well, but we do have mesh on the inside of there. So we can have one of these closed and one of these open just for the setup today. And then since we are gonna be using our stove, we wanna make sure that our stove jack, like I said, is peeled back and secured out of the way. So we'll just peel this guy all the way back. And then we've got a handy dandy little keeper built into here. We'll just take our little bone button, wrap that up nice and tight, put that in there. And the other cool thing about this stove jack feature is that if for whatever reason you do manage to singe or otherwise damage this piece, it itself is Velcro replaceable. So if you said, I want to get a smaller stovepipe, we will eventually have these pieces available as a repair part. So, but that one's good enough for today. So we found our pole pocket. I'm gonna help Caleb out by exposing that for him. And then we'll get the pole in here. So, yep, super easy. Just put the pole in. And now, Caleb's gonna stand up. We're probably gonna need to lengthen that right off the bat here. All right, how's that for tight, so let's, where we need to be. We got our first stakes in the ground here, and then we're gonna be able to pull tight as we go around. I'm gonna set that stake a little more. Yeah, I think once we get this side kind of pulled tight here, hold that pole straight up, Caleb. Yeah, there you go. Come on out this door over here. Yeah, Caleb's been hanging out in the tent, dodging the wind. No, I'm trying to stake them where I can. That's the main ground stakes. So now we can put our guylines out with some deadmans as well. So the guylines are gonna be what helps us prevent the whole teepee from swaying. So we've got her staked out all the way around the bottom, so she's pulled down to the ground, but we've still got play up here. So we're gonna take these pre-attached guidelines, G-U-Y, guylines, and then we'll be able to pull it tight and prevent that lovely wind flapping nylon sound that we all love to hear all night long. So you can put these on there really loose. You just got a little plastic buckle here that's got teeth in it. So we're gonna take that and we're gonna pull it tight, and then the tension of this pulling on itself keeps it locked into those teeth right there. And now we've got a nice tight seam running up our whole teepee there. Guitar tight. You want to hear, like, you should almost be inviting hillbillies with the twang, right? So that's a little more cello bass slap. So you're inviting hipsters at this point. Probably shouldn't have all that out there, but I've got a nice trench perpendicular to my angle of pull here coming off my seam. So I want a good straight trench, and I got a nice, this side of the log is pretty flat. So that's gonna give me my surface area once I start getting my snow, kind of pack that down, and then we can fill in the backside, get this sucker. And if you leave this here for a couple days and the temperatures are swinging above and below freezing, this is gonna be a semi-permanent anchor, and I mean that in that spring will be what releases this anchor. It will be a block of ice. So it is kind of handy when you're gonna deadman to use something that you can leave behind, sticks, rocks, that sort of thing. So you don't wanna be worried about not having all the stakes for the next night or just the next time you're gonna use it. And so now I can, if I give myself a little working room, there we go. So you can go around if you're gonna be somewhere a long time and the conditions are really, sort of volatile, like we're gonna be getting high winds and all that kind of stuff, but if you've got a good forecast and you're just gonna come out and play around a little bit, you don't have to stake down every single loop. As a matter of fact, I don't, just to allow more oxygen flow when you do wanna run that stove or the wood stove or your liquid fuel stove, your white gas, or whatever you're gonna run in here, your Mr. Buddy. Gotta keep an eye on ventilation, right? We can't burn up all of our oxygen inside of our living space. So, like I said, it's a little counterintuitive to let the cold air in, but that cold air is the breathable air that we need. And our fire needs it to breathe as well. So there is a trade-off. That's why a lot of your other tents, in the past, they're they're double wall, so they have a screen, and then you put a vestibule out over the rest of the footprint to provide that circulation. So our circulation is just gonna come from not having this tied all the way down, right? So if we've got bad weather, we can choose our upwind side, and we have a snow skirt here that we can kind of lay out, and then just pack a little bit of snow on here and there. Just so we can, you know, that's what it would look like if we were saying this was our upwind side. We want to keep this side battened down. So, but our wind's gonna work around and it'll still work through. And we still got, even though our vent up top is Velcroed closed, you can still see an air gap in there. So we're still gonna get ventilation drawing that way. So what I run for a floor are just casualty blankets. You can get these on Amazon or your local Army surplus store usually. So they're kind of a cross between a tarp and a space blanket. That's kind of why I like them. So they have a reflective side. So I'll just take one of these and basically just spread it out. And then that'll be 1 or 2 guys' footprint over there. And then we'll take another one and lay it out. And then we've got our heat reflecting side up to give us a hand with thermal reflection on our sleeping bags and sleeping pads. Right, so my floor would look a little bit like that. Probably gonna shift it because of our stove jack. We've got a stove from Winnerwell, and it's super fast and super easy. So this is the bottom. We're just gonna fold our legs out, and depending on if you're on the snow or not, you know, so I know, well, that's gonna get hot, and what's the snow gonna do? It's gonna melt. So we're gonna go ahead and build us a little platform here, kind of square it up as much as we can, keeping an eye on our stove there. So I know my stove jack, I've got the front of my stove here, and so my stove will be pretty close there. So this Winnerwell stove's pretty cool. So basically, I don't know, more than half of it is together. So these are just hinged to the base, and then we just got riveted throw levers right here. So just raise those up, slide those down in our grooves, our stake pockets. Boom. And then if we're outside, you know, if we're floating down the river or whatever, this can also be our fire pan. But we're gonna be using it inside today, so we're gonna put our lid on it. Again, nice and easy. So we've got our spark arrestor here. Just set that there. And our chimney is a piece of, I don't know, I think it's 28 gauge or whatever, super thin sheet metal. So it's rolled up on along its long axis for storage, but to give us our stove, we're gonna unroll it. And then, so one of the key things to doing this is being very careful on these edges because they are sharp. And then we want to make sure we have our keeper rings close by and handy. So I like to leave them just sitting on top of that. And And then we're just gonna roll this guy on its edge here. And somebody, well, I don't know what happened here in the middle, but at some point you can see how important it is to keep your stove materials protected, because we've got a crease in our chimney here, in our pipe. So I'm gonna put my keepers on and then just kind of start spacing them out a little bit. And we can kind of just keep working them down. So and then whenever you're sliding this, I like to always keep that seam on the opposite side. So if I'm running my hand down, I'm not putting the web of my hand over the sharp metal edge there. Okay, so now we've got our stovepipe. And depending on how bad it is outside, I'm gonna get a close-up of this here. So we've got the other important piece of our chimney is our our spark arrestor. And you'll see on the spark arrestor, there's two metal rims, like there's a gap in there. We're gonna put our stovepipe inside both of those so that you've got the, our little metal keepers are gonna be what crimp down on the stovepipe. Keep that all nice and neat there. And then I think that's what someone was trying to do. They were trying to bend it up and out, and they just bent the pipe all together. So we're a little bit off, so we have to come just a bit forward here. Boom. Fireplace is set. So I put it up on those blocks so that it doesn't just eventually melt down into the snow on us. Put my cheat code in here. And the other thing that I keep in the stove, or with the stove, is just a nifty little fire starting kit. All this stuff available obviously at North 40. So we'll get a little fire going, and should have brought a thermometer to see how hot it gets in here. One good thing about the wintertime and that snow is it basically gives you an extra couple, maybe even 4 feet. So now you're reaching another level of the dead limbs, right? And I always carry an extra length of rope. So some good rope, like 3/8, not just skinny 550. You want some 3/8, maybe 1/2 inch, probably 25 feet of it. And what you can do is actually just throw that over a branch, and then 2 guys can literally just fall backwards and snap that whole branch off. That's a technique I've used in the past. We're just gonna build a fire like any other, start small. And the cool thing about camping in a teepee is you can, basically make a firewood pile right inside your door here. So what we'll do, poof. So this is a smaller stove box, so you're gonna have to stay on the fire, but if you do have a little pack saw or something where you can cut a couple inch round pieces to fit in there, it'll last a long time. And then you might get a little smoke because it's not a perfect seal all the way up. And we have some cracks in our stovepipe there. But once you get a good hot fire, there'll be less smoke and that heat will rise and draw and circulate the air. So we increase the airflow by, this lever back here controls a dampener which opens and closes back here. So if we turn it to the closed position, you'll see we start getting smoke spit out the front there, and then we open it, and now it's allowing the full draw of the air and the smoke. We'll shut our front door here.
Ooh, Snickers.
Leftover turkey wrap.
From Thanksgiving?
A Christmas turkey.